Welcome to Digital Painting Outdoors. I'm artist Aaron Rutten, and in this video I'm taking a hike down to Cintiq Park, which is a really nice park here in Seattle, Washington. It's not too far from my house, and I'm going to be doing a digital painting down at the beach. But before I can get to the beach, I have to kind of hike through this trail here. So down on the bottom left, you'll see the work in progress. This is a drawing that I'm doing kind of in the future here, while I'm already down at the beach, and this video in the background is kind of the progression as I make my way down to the beach. What I'm doing is I took a reference photo with the camera on my tablet, and then I'm just doing a quick sketch over it just to have an outline of where everything's at. So this Cintiq Park is a really interesting park because it starts out, you kind of have to hike down this bluff down towards the water, but along the way there is a creek that cuts through all of the foliage and everything, so you kind of follow the creek and eventually you get down to the beach. But there's a lot of different things to see as far as plants and animals and different environments. The creek is really interesting, and I wanted to stop and paint the creek as well as a lot of other things that I saw, but I knew that the beach was probably going to be the more interesting scene because the sun was starting to go down. So at this point, as I'm painting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start blocking in the values, and that's just black and white and gray. And the reason why I do this is because the light changes over time as you're painting, especially if you're going to try to do a sunset or a sunrise. You really only have a matter of minutes to really get the painting done before everything changes. So rather than fuss about color specifically, you want to block in the value first. And I learned this lesson from the painting that I did before this, where I was at the Rose Garden, where it was basically about the same time, but I took a little too long to paint because I included too many objects in my painting. So simplifying is another good piece of advice, because you can get out there and you can see these really complex nature scenes and want to paint them all, but you really don't have enough time to do it in one day, generally speaking. So you have to kind of capture the essence of the piece. You can always bring a camera with you and take a photo and work on it more in the studio, but for this particular piece I wanted to challenge myself and see what I could do in a short amount of time. I plan to do this more often, and I'm going to find a lot more locations to go and paint so there's more variety in these videos. Finding locations is easy. I just went on Google Maps, and you can see on the map the little green spaces where there's parks, and then you can go into Street View and kind of scope out some areas. You want to have a good idea of where you're going so that you can kind of make sure that it's a good place to set up and paint. But I'd been here before, so I knew that it was going to be a good place to go, and it was a challenging hike at that. So here I finally made it down to the beach, and I'm kind of scoping things out, deciding what exactly I want to paint and where I want to set up. There's so many nice things like the waves and the driftwood and the rocks. There are even lots of animals out there like seagulls, and it was really hard to decide. One of the things I like about Seattle is that it's really easy to find places like this to go. There's the beach, there's mountains, there's forests. There's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of public parks that are free, so it's not hard to just go out and pick a place to go painting. I guess it's deciding what to paint that is the challenge once you get there. But I finally decided on a subject. The light was starting to change, so I picked a spot over where the creek finally drains into the ocean. There's a nice reflective pool, and there were a couple of ducks, which I thought was a good luck sign, so I went ahead and started setting up over by the ducks. As I was setting up, I was kind of looking around, and off to the side there ended up being a kind of surprising heron. Now and then you see them occasionally. They're kind of reclusive, but every now and then they'll show up. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up. What I have with me is my Surface Pro drawing tablet. You could also use a Cintiq Companion. I have a stylus pen, a collapsible chair, weather protection, an umbrella because it rains here a lot, food and drink, my camera, my tripod, and my hiking pack. It's important that you bring enough gear with you, and I got this really big hiking pack because I wanted to be able to fit this chair in it. I'm not sure that everybody could carry around as much gear as me because I'm a pretty big guy. But I had quite a bit stuffed into that bag. I brought everything I thought I would need. So I have my tablet here, I've got my little keyboard, and I've got my pen, and I'm going to go ahead and get set up and start painting. So this is where we're kind of merging into real time now, and since I have the grayscale painting done, all I need to do is add color over the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of glaze or tint the underlying artwork to add color. So I added some overall kind of blue-gray because that was the kind of mood of the piece. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding some light back in, some light yellow, to bring back in the highlights. And then here near the horizon, I see some light rays that are kind of zinging through, and so I'm adding some fine details there. What's important is that since I'm painting this sky reflected in the pool in front of me, I want to make sure that I mirror everything on the horizon, so I'm trying to make sure that I do that as I'm painting. Observation is really important here. You'll see me looking up pretty often, and what I'm doing is I'm just focusing on little areas. Right now it's the area around the sunlight, and I'm just trying to add in some colors. You don't have to match the landscape exactly. In fact, it's probably going to be really, really hard for you to match the landscape that you're painting in a limited amount of time, especially if it's a time critical thing like a sunset. So what you want to do is you want to just capture the essence of the piece, capture the feeling. How does it make you feel? And I know that's one of those, you know, weird artsy things that people tell you all the time, but it's true in this case. You have to accept that you're not going to be able to do the same kind of painting as you can do in a studio outdoors. You're going to have to try to do what you can, and it's a challenge. You'll learn a lot from it, and the paintings have a certain character that paintings that you do in the studio don't. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a lot of little fine details here because you want there to be a lot of expression in this piece. If it's going to be a little bit loose as far as the composition goes, you want to have some loose brush strokes in it. So I'm adding in all these little highlights for the rocks and the clouds, and it's really helping the piece come together. And then what I'm going to do is after I've added all that in, I'm going to kind of smooth things out. I dropped all my layers down to a single layer, and then now I'm using a blender to kind of blend it a little bit everywhere. I don't want to blend away all of my sharp details, but I want to blend some of them. So I want there to be a balance in the focus. I want there to be some blurry areas and some sharp areas and everything in between. And I'm kind of just doing it by eye. I'm deciding now what looks right and what doesn't. But this is kind of the bringing together all of the roughness that there was before. So you can start out kind of blocky, and you'd be amazed at what you can do to bring things together just by blending. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to balance the lighting a little bit more, because the sun is really actually setting right now and the light's kind of changing. It's really starting to kind of blast me in the eyes, so I'm feeling more like adding in more light, but I'm going to not go too intense with it. So at this point, I'm done with the piece. The sun's going to set. I need to get out of there and hike back out before it's too dark. Here is the finished painting, and I think this one turned out pretty good. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be doing more of these kinds of videos in a lot of different locations. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video and share it on YouTube and on Facebook, and that'll make it easier for other artists out there to find this information. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Digital Painting Outdoors.